direction. We are thankful for the kids, especially that little one. He is a corker. Takes after Mike. Revelation chapter 12. And we'll be looking at verse 13 on through the end of the chapter. This world and Satan absolutely despises righteousness. They run from it, as a matter of fact. They do everything they can to look like they're anything but righteous. And we see it so prevalently in our society now. I'm not care about the world society because it's just as corrupt as ours, but ours has gotten more corrupt than ever. I recall a newsman that recently came on and said that he's going to do things differently. He's going to be honest and be fair. But the man that signs his paycheck's probably telling me you got to be what I tell you to be. So I haven't heard anything honest and fair yet out of anybody. Just an example of how unrighteous the news media is. And here's one of the things that Satan does, and one of the tools he uses is they seek to destroy the reputation of a righteous man and woman. They even seek to destroy the life of those people. We call it persecution, but it's Satan driven. It is that spirit of the Antichrist that is within the world. And it's been there since the time of Christ. We know that. Paul wrote about it. And what we have here is the consequences of that persecution. So powerfully strong it is. So let's start on verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he had was thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. Now, if you recall, we looked at the woman, and basically, we said the woman was Israel. That's the first thing we want to consider. It is Israel, and it also encompasses the church and Mary and all that. But Israel is what we're honing in on right here. I believe personally that when John saw this vision, he understood it right away. Because he knew that Israel as a nation was under this persecution. He knew the church was under this persecution. He knew that the church needed to experience these things. So when Satan was cast down from heaven, he pursued the church. The word there, by the way, in the Greek is hounded. It's a pretty good word, isn't it? I've heard of the hellhounds of heaven, but in this case, this is the hellhound of hell. He is out there like a bulldog on a bone. He is out to get you and devour you. And he's done so for 2,000 years. So this happens to be geared towards Israel. And I believe John understood that. Because you see, the history that he's already lived through is in 66 AD. There was a big revolt in Israel. The Jews raised up against Rome and was going to try to overthrow Rome, which was a foolish thing when you consider all things. But yet they could not stand the rule of the Romans. And so they rose up in a revolt, which brought about the siege of Jerusalem in 69 AD, which brought about what Jesus prophesied in 70 AD, the fall of Jerusalem. which brought about as a consequence the dispersion of the Jews. Now, the first dispersion was basically up into Galilee. A lot of them went to Galilee, but we need to understand that when they were destroyed, they were destroyed. 10,000s, tens of thousands of Jews were killed. That's a lot of people, a lot of Jews. And then when those that went up into Galilee, they had no choice but to restructure their worship service. They didn't have a temple anymore. So they basically went to synagogues, which they still do that to today. As a consequences, not did they just lose lives, the city and the temple was destroyed. Not only that, but all the spoils that were taken out of the temple. Not the Ark of the Covenant, by the way, because the Ark of the Covenant wasn't there at this time. But Rome took all the gold and silver that they could. Didn't leave them with anything. They took the slaves. 3 years later, in 73 AD, Masada fell. We've all heard of that. There was even a movie out here not too terribly long, a few years ago. Maybe it's been longer than I think. Might have been 20 years ago. About the Roman war machine and how it built a ramp up this mountain to siege Masada and put an end to the rebellion completely and dispersed them among the nations, and then barred any Jew ever to enter into Jerusalem again. I'm not sure how they did that. You try to sneak in. I suspect there was a way they had. Maybe it was they had a Roman centurion at every gate and asked you to declare yourself. And if you were speaking Hebrew, or if you had a Hebrew dialect, or I can't think of the name of it now. Anyway, like a southern dialect, they deny you. Maybe even arrest you. Or it could be, and this happened quite often with the Jews, they had to wear a mark. Keep that in your mind, because we're going to be looking at that again sometime soon in the future. So as a result, the center of worship for the Jews was actually in Galilee. And you would think they would have went to the temple that the Samaritans had, but they didn't like Samaritans. I guess that continued, that hatred continued. But God did this. Don't ever mistake that. God allowed this to happen for a reason. He was merciful. Because Rome could have come in and absolutely slaughtered all of them. But they didn't. So look at verse 14. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and a half time. We all realize, and we've seen the results of it, that in modern days that Israel has been scattered among the nations. But they were more than just scattered among the nations. They were brought in and they were enslaved by the Romans. And I suspect the Romans had centurions would take some of the Jews as slaves into the provinces around Asia Minor and up in the Roman area. enslaved. Can you imagine? I was raised in Jerusalem. I was born in Jerusalem. I worshiped in the temple of God. And now where am I? I have no temple. I have no home. I'm but a slave. But there's a wilderness. And I think that's what God's vision is all about right now, is to say that wilderness is actually a place where you can go and you have no self-rule. That's kind of what it means, by the way. No self-rule. So you have to consider this. They're scattered everywhere. They have no organization. They have no absolute worship service when they're out in these areas as slaves or dispersed, other than little groups. No nation. No temple. But God in His grace and in His mercy took them to a place where they would actually survive. Were they protected in those areas? Not the way we want to think about being protected. We want it all to be good news that He destroyed Jerusalem and then they just came back and rebuilt it. And that's what we want. But God dispersed them for a reason, for a time and a half time, till there is a time when I want to bring them back. So it means God has a purpose to bring them back. But what it means to me is that God has always kept His promise and covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and with His people. Always. And so He didn't allow them to be destroyed. Like anytime they went into captivity, He never allowed them to be destroyed. And that's why it says that He was lifted up as an eagle wings. Did you know that every time it says eagle wings, it usually means God? God's protection, God's hand on them to hold them and to keep them. So, we had this discussion in Sunday school this morning about persecution and faith. What direction does it take when you're persecuted? Where do you look to? Where did they look to? Well, they looked directly to God for the help that they needed. Most of us are familiar with how the Jews treated the Israeli people in Germany. And Frank's diary. Most of us are aware of that. What awful things they have to endure. What fear they had to endure. But above all things, they held to their faith in God. Satan is out to destroy Israel. Satan is out in force, working to destroy and break the church. He wants anybody that's standing up witnessing for Jesus, he wants them dead. Trust me on that. In fact, just this week, I think it was in Nairobi, Africa, there were like 23 Christians slaughtered. In one place, not as a whole, one place, one church slaughtered for the faith in Jesus Christ. You think it won't come to this country?
Come on. Yes, sir.
We already got them in as mayor of a city, in Congress, and in the Senate. What do you think is going to happen whenever we are under Sharia law? It'll happen if we're not careful. I think it'll happen anyway. I think it brings about what God plans. Satan's greatest tool is to stir up anger towards unbelievers. We see it. We see it by the lies that are told about Christians. We see it by the slander that's told. We saw it by the names that we're called. We are called bigots. We're called delusional. We're called homophobic or Islamic phobic, or on and on it goes. Long as it's a phobia, you guys are nuts. That's what it means. You need something. There's something wrong with you. Well, yeah, there is something wrong with me. I can't tolerate sin. I won't tolerate sin. But Israel has been carried away and dispersed. And there's a reason. God keeps his covenant with Abraham and his promise with Abraham. He keeps that. And so he protects them without them knowing it, but he dispersed them because they broke the covenant with God. God didn't break it. They broke it because they rejected the long-awaited Messiah. I got news for you. The next time the Messiah comes, they can't reject him. Because he's coming with his armies, and he's coming with an iron scepter, and he's going to rule Jerusalem with a rod of iron. He is going to be in charge of not just Jerusalem. His influence will be throughout this world.
Yes, amen.
Which means he's keeping them because God's work's not finished. This has got to take place. Look at verses 15 and 16. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with the flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured out from its mouth. As I read that, it made me wonder. For 2,000 years, Satan is trying to destroy all signs of the people of Israel. So I did a search of all the persecutions that Israel has gone through since 66 AD to 2026. There were so many I couldn't number them. I just wrote down some of the major dates. I'm not going to give you all the information about them because it includes Christians persecuted called the Byzantine Empire, the Ottomans, the Medes, and on to the Germans. These are just the major, large persecutions. In 135, 315, 379, 613, 1096, 11,047, 11,089, and on it went. On and on it went. How much does Satan really hate Israel? Well, now let's look at 1933. What happened in 1933? 6 million Jews perished. 6 million. And I don't know for sure how many were counted as if they were ever died or if they lived whenever they were doing experimental surgeries on them. No, let's see what the body will actually take. Let's see what we can create. It's horrific. what God's people went through, but they still had faith in God. We haven't gone through that kind of stuff. So how did the earth protect them? If the flood came and the earth opened up and protected them, how did the earth protect them? The earth, the world came together and protected them. I don't think so. I think God protected them in all situations. The underlying ideal of God protecting them or the earth swallowing them up is the earth is fertile. What is planted in the earth will grow. And as you look at the history of Israel, they have never come close to being exterminated. The Egyptians tried, in a way. They killed the babies for a short time, but that also doubled their work and lessened their food. Why did he do that? Let my people go. And then you can travel all the way through history and see all these things, the major persecutions, and you have to wonder, how on earth could there possibly have been a Germany to oppress his people? Because there are countless nations that have done the same thing. But in all cases, the earth was fertile and Israel grew. Did you know, it wasn't too long ago, I'm not sure if it's changed any yet or not, but that there are more Jews living in New York City than there are in Israel? Still not come home. In 1948, God set that time aside. It's done. I'm in the process of doing something right now. I have made you a nation now. And this is ridiculous, to tell you the truth. This nation, an infant nation, that they are declared as by the League of Nations as a nation, the Arabs try to kill them, try to destroy them. How can they possibly fight back against them as unprepared as they had to be? Well, history tells us who won that war. Also, spirituality tells us that there were some powers behind that war. Some things happened that we understand could only have been by the hand of God. And there's a reason. Because in 2026, you look at Israel right now. A little bitty nation surrounded by larger nations like Turkey and Iraq and Iran. Those that hate them. And they are still more powerful than the bunch of them. Now we want to say, hey, pat ourselves on the back because the United States, we've done it, we've helped them. There's a problem with our thinking. They're there because God wants them there.
Oh, maybe.
He wants them there because Jesus is going to return to rule. If that don't make you excited, I think it ought to. That we had looked at some time ago, early on in the book, how things are set, that the Lord has set things the way He wants them in place. And now we're beginning to see how they play out. And this is part of it. Later we're going to be looking at the mark of the beast and all that. This is part of it. Verse 17. Then the dragon became fierce with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. I wonder who that is. Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be the church. Out of Israel was born the church, because Jesus was a Jew, promised. As I read that last verse, the last part of that verse is, he stands on the sea. I couldn't help but look at today's news. You know what controls 90%, well, I won't say 90, but probably 35, 45 at least % of world trade? What waterways do?
Come on.
Persian Gulf,
Yep.
Dead Sea,
Horse.
Hormuz, which we're fighting about right now. And the Iranians are effectively just jerking us around and doing what they want, doing exactly what they want. But then there's another little country called Oman, and it's promised to shut down the Red Sea shipping lanes. And they tried. I wonder, standing on the sands. Just wonder. But I do know, out of all of it, those and many others are the satanic forces at work to destroy and break the church. I have to wonder what's going to happen if gas goes to $10 a gallon. How's it going to affect the church? How's it going to affect society in general? We're already hearing grumblings from those that are supposedly ardent mega followers. Grumbling. And gas is only just a little under $3 a gallon here, or $4 a gallon here. God is setting things up. Beware. It is a satanic force that is seeking to destroy the witness of Jesus Christ. We may find ourselves in the same position as Israel. What they've gone through the years. These are his tools to stir up anger towards you and I. Slander. Hatred, those delusions we talked about, bigotry, all those things. God has blessed us greatly, because just like Israel, he has protected, especially in this country, he has protected the Church of Jesus Christ. But only for one reason, by the way. Because we have had a powerful outreach and influence for Jesus Christ in this world. But when that wanes, maybe I should not say when.
Now that.
We're in the midst of it, aren't we? Because we are bigots. We are homophobic. We're delusional. They're taking away the authority of the gospel. Truth. Chuck, would you close us in prayer?